What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves, physically, emotionally, and spiritually?
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them, visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies? Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Join the stars of the Ancient Aliens TV show, Eric Von Däniken, as he returns to Manchester after an amazing response to his last presentation. David Childress will guide you through the evidence left behind. Mike Barrow will take you to other worlds, where Nick Pope will present the real X-Files. Paula Harris will share incredible testimonies. It's time to believe and raise consciousness. Join like-minded souls on Saturday, June 23rd, 2018 for Awakening. What do you believe?
This is the World Satsang on the 23rd of December 2017, held in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show. And again, I also thank Kevin for his work in broadcasting the Satsang with those wonderful graphics and images that he manages to put onto YouTube, and make it more of an alive audio and visual experience as well as just being audio. Kevin, as you probably know, has been travelling around the US, interviewing different individuals, different channelers, and I think he's on his fourth or fifth interview right now, and it's looking really good so far. He's interviewed myself as well for his sort of spiritual documentary called They Call Us Channelers, where and to try to understand the background behind channeling, what people do in channeling, and the sort of results that different people do and the different techniques they have as well. So it's looking really good. If you get a chance to look on his YouTube channel, he's got some interesting sort of prelude videos that he's done when he's travelling from place to place as well. So it's quite good. He's enjoying himself, and B, it's going to be a really useful piece of work. This documentary, and I think it'll probably go to National Geographic or Discovery Channel, one of those channels that are sort of on the digital network. Okay. Before I start, I just want to let you know, if I've been a bit slow in responding for the last week or so, I probably will be a bit slow up until about the 3rd of January as well. It's because my father ascended on the 9th of December. He was very ill with Parkinson's disease. The variant of Parkinson's disease he had was a bit similar to motor neuron disease. It didn't shake, but everything was slowing down to the point of being inoperative. And the Tuesday before he went, he actually said that he didn't think he'd be around this long, and I think that he decided to go quite quickly, because literally 2 days after that he was really ill, and ascended 22 hours after being put into hospital. So actually, no, was it 22 hours? Yes, it was about 22 hours after a visit hospital. So just to let you know, if I'm a bit slow, it's because I'm having to deal with all sorts of funeral arrangements and sorting things out and letting people know, and all the rest of the paraphernalia that surrounds winding somebody's estate up as well. So I apologise if I'm a bit slow in responding at times. I'm going to go through the hidden technology of ancient Egypt, which is a legacy from Atlantis. And actually, this is part 1 of 2. I've decided that the first part is more to do with tangible technology, stuff that has disappeared but was used in ancient Egypt. And I'll focus on 2 or 3 pieces of technology that they used. What I'll be talking about in January, on the Satsang on the 27th of January 2018, is to understand the energetics behind it. And that's not specifically how those devices worked, it's the mental capabilities or functionality that the Egyptians had. Certainly those who were trained, the high priestesses, those sort of things, the hierophants, that level of individual who were really self-realized and were able to work with Source, the higher self, and all the other capabilities associated with being a higher frequency. So I'll work on that in January. Next, there'll be a set of questions, and a group of questions which are quite interesting, I think. And then we're going to do a fine needs meditation to go through how to connect with the soul in the soul seat. So it's really connecting with your own soul, so to speak. Okay. So exactly what technology did the Egyptians have that was a carryover from the Atlantean period? Well, one thing's for certain, there's no evidence of it being there. There are lots of buildings, as we know, pyramids and other temples depicting life in quite complicated ways within Egypt, but apart from that which was stone, and therefore could tell a test of time and provide the thought process for us all to work with in trying to understand the Egyptians and what they were worked with, there's nothing tangible that indicates the technology they were working with. Now, basically, when Egypt was created, it was created as a function of an instantaneous recreation, as a function of a need to re-establish incarnate mankind's usefulness as a means of accelerating our evolutionary progression by being incarnate. And so Egypt was created almost instantaneously by Source and by those curators working with Source, and of course those other highly evolved individuals who were working with the free will project, so to speak. And so there were a number of individuals who were self-realized, who chose to stay behind and work with those individuals who subsequently then started to incarnate. So there were a number of individuals from the Atlantean period who stayed behind to help educate those people who incarnated without knowledge of Atlantis within Egypt. Now, there were within the Egyptian population, there were people who were pure enough, or could be trained to be pure enough, to be able to take on board some of the more higher frequential or mental functions associated with being able to work with some of these technologies. But the technologies themselves were in actual fact, very, very divorced from what we know as technology now. Most of them needed to have an energetic link between the individual who was operating them, call it telepathic if you want to, and the function of what they did. Now, in part 2, I'm going to mention the sort of the higher functions, the more spiritual functions of some of the higher priests and the hierophants within Egypt, and that will identify how they managed to control these devices. But the devices themselves were basically things that controlled the environment. They had devices that controlled the weather. They could create rain when they wanted to, in the area that they wanted to, for the length of time or duration they wanted to. They could materialize new objects out of the materials available in thin air, or they could transmute objects from one particular form to another form. They could change the state of forms. For instance, the blocks on the pyramids and the buildings, these huge blocks, they were made to be as light as a feather by changing the density or the mass, by changing the way that the atomic structure worked with each other whilst not destroying the overall structure. So a huge block of stone, for instance, could be moved around very easily by one or two people without any stressful strain at all. Put in the right place, and then a device will be put back onto that block to change it back to its natural form, natural density associated with that particular material that's being used or element that's being used. They could transport things from a teleportation perspective as well. They didn't need to have cars or aeroplanes. They could just, with these devices, move them from one place to another place. They could work with the energies of the plants and the trees and the bushes for crops if they wished, and there was no need for any seasons. If they could work on the weather structure, then there was an all year round season that was the same season, and so they could also work with the way in which the crops worked. So they didn't become seasonal crops; they would be creating crops all year round. So they lived what appeared to be a very simple existence, because the technologies that we have around us now isn't sort of simple, but there were technologies that were, without doubt, were labour saving. They enabled them to communicate a long distance, irrespective of whether they used telepathy. They could use again, same as just with mobile phones and video phones and computers and everything else. They could use similar things to communicate with other beings in the locale of our solar system, and they were very close to and drew, well, the higher priests anyway, drew a lot of source of understanding from those beings, those incarnate beings that are in the Sirius area, the Syrians, I'm going to call them that. And so those particular beings, they were lianoid in their vision, so to speak, were in constant communication with them, hence the constant reference to lions in the Egyptian period, whether it was a lion, like the Sphinx, for instance, or whether it was whether they were shown using lions to pull their chariots. The lion on Earth, of course, weren't as intelligent as those lianoid sort of incarnate vehicles that were from Sirius. But in effect, the association with the Syrians or the population from Sirius was a focus for them, and they tried to use everything that was similar to this race to remind them that they are in communication with this race. They didn't come all the time; they weren't there all of the time, but they did come on a sort of a semi-regular basis, which could be a couple of times within the lifetime of one particular individual, or they could be they could visit in between somebody's lifetime. So somebody who was born and died may not see them, but somebody else might see them twice in their lifetime, for instance. The Egyptians also had some of the technology that was used to heal the body or change the body, for instance. And we see images associated with half man, half animal humanoid forms. Now, these humanoid forms are basically, again, the result of medical technology that was brought from Atlantis, and to change your form was considered to be a function of high status and high wealth. And so some of the Atlanteans who were working with the Egyptians were stuck in those forms because they didn't have the technology available to them. That's one technology that was banned, by the way, to Egypt, because it was one of the technologies that was considered to be part of the downfall of Atlantis. But they had all sorts of different technologies that were, not what we would consider to be used now. They could even change the orbit of the moon to help with the energy of the moon, to help plants grow, to change things like in some other areas of the world where there were any seas, they could change the height of the height of any tides. Now around the Red Sea area, there's very little tidal movements at all, but they could change it so that they could harvest some of the. They could change the moon's location so they could use the moon's gravitational pull to remove some of the sea from a particular area, so that they could harvest things like fish and those sort of things, or gain other minerals or other elements that are available on the seabed. So they had these devices which created immense levels of attractivity. Not only do they have devices that could make materials light, but they can make them extremely heavy as well. So they could make a feather, for instance, weigh several hundred tons, and therefore it would sink into the earth, for instance. And that's another way in which they would make, for instance, foundations. And some of these things are available in books already. And there's some people who've written books based upon memories of previous lives, who've broadcast what they experienced. But they were able to do a lot of different things that are associated with transmutation of form and energy and mass and substance. The weather is one thing that I've just mentioned. There's a gentleman who's with using various different materials together in unique combinations or laminates and in various different shapes that can affect the etheric associated with the weather system of the earth and can create rain, for instance. And this gentleman and my late father-in-law, Dennis Milner, he showed me a number of different videos of this gentleman showing some of his devices on boats and on aeroplanes, and showed areas that were completely cloudless suddenly become cloudy and start to rain when he started to work with these devices. Some of them had to move or rotate, some of them had to move on a vessel or a boat or an aeroplane to make them work. Some of them just need to be stationary. And you could see that he was able to manipulate the local environments and create a weather system to be able to create rain for those areas that needed it. And this is a similar technology to what the Egyptians had that was a legacy from Atlantis. They could also move into the sea. I mean, they had the ability to create an environment around them. Now, we use diving suits or diving bells or submarines to go into the sea, but some of the devices that the Egyptians had initially that were Atlantean were basically a device that created like a shell, an energetic shell around them that means that they could still breathe air and move through the water as if they were on land. And so they were able to move around and achieve things in the water with this little device attached to them, because it created an air environment around them, basically. And so they moved around as if they were in the air, but they were underwater. And this enabled them to do work underwater, in terms of gathering minerals, creating structures, and if they weren't using the moon, for instance, which was quite a dramatic one. They only used the moon's gravitational forces, or manipulated the moon in needs of serious, shall we say, civil engineering, i.e., moving of seas, or changing the tides of a sea to being quite dramatic on very rare occasions. Normally, they would use these other devices that allowed them to be underwater, that created an oxygen environment around them and allowed them to move as if they were on the, as if they're on land, so to speak. They had a number of other different things. They could increase the frequency of the local environment themselves, which would allow them to without meditation and without work, raise their frequencies to the point where they could work on the next frequency level. And so therefore they'll be able to communicate with other entities, incarnate or disincarnate, on a temporary basis by the use of this mechanism that would temporarily raise their frequencies. And so they were in communication with and in cooperation with those individuals who moved up to a higher frequency, or those other beings, incarnate or other, that populated the higher frequencies of the Earth. So the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th frequencies, up to the 12th, they could access by literally dialing in a frequency, and they would sort of zone out of this frequency, zone into the next frequency, and be able to work with beings and entities on those different levels as well. They didn't need to use things like telescopes. They had the capacity to locally warp space, and so they could see all around the local galaxy and beyond by using a function of gravity to be able to see that which is in existence, let's say 30 or 40 parsecs away. They could zoom into that area by distorting space and time locally. It was quite a complicated piece of equipment, but it also removed this thing about light taking, so many hundreds of thousands of years to get to us, and so whatever they would be observing with this gravitational-based telescope, if you want to call it that, without the time delay associated with it, so whatever they would be seeing or observing or experiencing would be seen real time, rather than as a vision of something which is thousands of years out of date. They also had the ability to levitate things as well. They didn't, although they liked to use earth-based vehicles that were pulled by lions, etc. They also liked to levitate, and they could levitate by using devices to move around. They had platforms that they worked with, and they could move around on these platforms. They would transport things from one place to another by having a platform that would levitate. It's a function of anti-gravity and magnetism is what they used. And interestingly enough, I'm just being reminded by Source that this is where the legend of flying carpets came from, because from the uneducated viewpoint, these platforms would look like, potentially, because they were decorated quite ornately. They would look like they would look like carpets flying in the air with somebody sitting on them. They weren't flying carpets, of course. They were platforms with maybe technology, but they would look like if you were uneducated and all you know is that something that's flat and can be sat on is usually a carpet on the floor, and you saw something that's flat and you sat on by somebody with other stuff being transported around, looked similar, because you don't get the perception of depth and everything else that's there, and you can't see the controlling features of the platform. You would think it'd be a carpet, and so there's a lot of Arabian sort of stories of flying carpets, etc., etc., that are taken from sort of ancient memory of what was some of the technologies that were being used by the Atlanteans, and that have been passed down to the ancient Egyptians, the very, very ancient Egyptians. Okay, so that's a few things there. Okay, just some of the technologies that are there. There's a lot more. For instance, how to work on creating light, everlasting light. Didn't use power, just use the change in the frequential state of certain materials. There's no need for bulbs or incandescent or fluorescence or LED-based bulbs. It was all to do with changing the state of a material, and that would allow it to glow. And the devices that allowed them to do that would mean that you could have this material fluorescing, for instance, forever, or you could turn it off if you wanted to as well, by just changing the state. So that's just a few of the pieces of hidden technology that were in ancient Egypt, which with the legacy from Atlantis, how they were controlled, and some of the mental functions, the energetics of surrounding them. We'll discuss in the Satsang on the 27th of January. So we'll now go on to some of the participants' questions, and hopefully we'll be able to answer those questions as well in a reasonable way. I don't actually revise these beforehand. So as a result, all of the questions are channeled on the spot, which is always interesting because it means that there's no preconceived responses to what we're experiencing in terms of the answers to these questions. Okay, first one is, and this is from US. I said that in a previous satsang, I said that there's no such thing as antimatter. But one of my readers wrote, this lady's also doing some blogs on the greater reality and various different aspects of the greater reality, so she's doing a fantastic work, and she also writes the transcripts as well, so I'm really grateful for that. So this is an interesting question again though. So antimatter has already been found and studied in particle physics. Every time lightning strikes, it leaves behind a trail of antimatter. How do you explain that? Well, they think it's antimatter. There's no such thing as antimatter. There's just matter that transposes from one frequential level to another. And actually, if it was antimatter, according to popular particle physics theory, matter and antimatter can't mix in the same space. So you'd have a bit of a problem, basically, in popular particle physics theory, that there'll be an explosion or a reaction of some sort. So what's happening there? It's basically when lightning strikes, there's a transposition of energy from one state to another, and what they're tracking is the change of state from the energy that's grounding on the Earth and going to a different level. You could call it a quantum level if you wanted to, but really it's a different frequential state. And the scientists detecting machines now are getting reasonably good, although nowhere near as good as they would need to be able to completely trace and identify which particular frequential level the resulting change of state of energy goes to and what it becomes. But what they're seeing now is a little bit of it, so to speak. I'm being told about 0.5% of the change of state of what the energy within lightning, electricity of course, within lightning changes from to. So it's not leaving behind a trail of antimatter, it's leaving behind a residual trail that's showing that it's changing from one state to another as a result of the immense force being exerted, the immense energy that's being exerted from lightning when it's grounding on the Earth or anywhere else, and the change of state associated with that is a result. Well, the energy that's created as a result of the earthing changes the state of the energy, and therefore it changes from one state to another, and a higher frequency. And that's because therefore it disappears out of our visual and detectable range. But clearly, there's a little bit of detectability that we've got now with the various different types of particle sensors, and they may even well do this in a particle accelerator, for instance. But in effect, what we've got is a misunderstanding. It's a bit like dark matter. We give something a name because we don't understand it, whereas in actuality, there is no such thing as dark matter, because the higher up the frequencies we go, I mean, I'll very quickly explain what dark matter, but to try and say dark matter is supposed to be the space in between stars that holds stars together, because things have got this, everything's got this structure where it all works, and although there's lots of black space in between stars and galaxies and nebulae, they're thinking that there must be some dark matter there that's holding it all together. Well, in actual fact, the higher up the frequencies you go, you start to see more things manifest on those higher frequencies associated with the physical universe. So it's not dark matter, it's just that the rest of the structure associated with the 12 frequencies of the physical universe start to become manifest on the higher frequencies, and it's those things that hold it all together on the lower frequencies. And so, the naming of dark matter is an error, because there's no such thing as dark matter. It's just, understanding the higher levels of structure. And with antimatter, again, it's something that's being described as a basis of poor understanding. I mean, we think with scientists and medical professionals and all of these different people in research, fully believe that they are extremely knowledgeable. A few choice individuals realise how much we don't know, and those are the individuals who will move forward, because they remove the paradigm around them that is currently here based on our existing knowledge, and look at things in a completely fresh eyes approach. And that's when we'll start to see that actually there isn't antimatter. It's just a different state, a change from one thing to another thing. Okay, so it's just understanding that. It's putting a name to something, and the name makes us think of one thing, and actually it's something completely different. It's a bit like calling a giraffe a dog. For those of you who've heard the giraffe and the dog story in the Reversing the Frequencies lectures, it's looking at something and saying it's got 4 legs, a neck, a body, and a tail, and therefore it must be a dog, because a giraffe's got the same thing. But unless you know the detail behind why a giraffe is a giraffe, you would still think of it as a dog if you saw a giraffe versus a dog. So it's the same sort of thing. It's creating an incorrect level of education, which I hope in the future we will understand. And I'm deliberating this quite a lot, actually. So I read something somewhere where a very clever individual, we talk about monopole magnets which don't exist, and we talk about one guy, one scientist said, if we ever discovered a monopole magnet, then the whole of physics would have to be rewritten. And that individual, I feel, was very enlightened, because he or she understood that there needs to be a complete rewriting of our knowledge when we start to discover things and experience them for what they are, not what we think they are. And so we think that what happens when lightning strikes creates antimatter. It just creates a change of state of energy and frequency. Simple as that, and it goes into something else. I wouldn't call it antimatter. I would like to describe it in the correct way, but I don't have the words to do it. Okay, well, I hope that helps. Next question is all about basically autism, which is interesting, because autistic individuals are very switched on. They're also quite connected to source, and generally have higher frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions. They're very trusting, loving, caring, and wonderful people, because they don't have this hidden agenda that most human beings have, trying to make themselves better, bigger, stronger, and richer. I just want to live and enjoy existence. So the first question is, what do people with autism or similar have to do when it comes to visualization? They often report images being blurry, not as clear, or being unable to hold them for more than a few seconds. Other things they report is being too in their head and have difficulty in seeing with mind's eye. So what could be the reasons for these? my feeling is that they are being confused by what they're experiencing and by what the rest of the population around them are telling them they should be experienced, and so that creates a block. So if somebody with autism is told to meditate and visualize something, for instance, they would work in a way which is going against their natural connectivity. So you start to get this struggle there between the way they normally work without any effort at all versus how they're being told to work, which requires effort because they're going against the flow basically. And so really they're struggling to work with the way that the rest of incarnate mankind wants them to work, because that's the way they work, where in real terms they're ultimately connected all the time. So it's all to do with trying to conform, okay? And this is the issue. They're trying to conform with what they're being told everybody else does. Actually, they've got instantaneous understanding of what the greater reality is. And even people with Asperger's syndrome are the same way. They have total connectivity. They don't need to work things out. They don't need to show how a mathematical equation goes from the start to the finish. They don't need to show the bit in the middle. They just know that if you give them the question, that's the answer. They don't go down the road of justifying it or quantifying it. They know the answer because they're connected, and they trust the connection. It's only when they have to be, when they're being put into this position of, you must work in this way, that it removes the trust in that connection, and things get blurry or difficult for them to work with. Okay. Some other parts to this, to elaborate, is it would be especially helpful if you or somebody could write a guide designed for people who are not neurotypical in mind, that can offer instructions on how best to approach endeavours like astral projection, activating the third eye, and do magic stroke work, stroke visualization. Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, there's a book I'm going to write on healing, which is going to be the book that is after the curators. The curators should be finished in July next year, July 2018. But I've then got to go through the editing process. But this healing book may well have an appendix at the back, or something that is designed to help people work with what they are rather than what they're told they should be, and that would help people heal, specifically people with autism or Asperger's, because they will recognise that the way they work is right, and the way that they've been told to work isn't right for them, and so that'll help. So I might well put that in as part of this book on how to heal and different healing techniques, both energetic and psycho-spiritual as well. I think that this would go into the psycho-spiritual aspect, and so I shall look at this, and also things like astral projection, different techniques for doing that. Obviously, the traversing the frequencies methodology moves you beyond astral projection, but activating the third eye, we can put in that as well. So I'll look at that. Thank you. Next part of it goes back to Asperger's. I've known people who are very upset that they can't visualise and communicate with spirits or entities because of the Asperger or autism spectrum. What I'm feeling here is that, along with the standard human being, this is quite natural for everybody. So it's not specific to people with Asperger's or autism, and the various different spectrums that sort of blur the lines between those two particular functions or functionality. It's a common thing. What we generally need to understand is that we have a function, a main function that we work with. It can be a tactile response to various different questions we ask of spirit. It can be hearing tinnitus, for instance. That could be a way of recognising that we've got an answer. or we could hear with our mind's ear spoken words, usually in the language of our current incarnation. We can see visualizations as well, or we can have just knowingness. So you've got clairaudience, clairvoyance, and clairsentience, along with what I'm going to call clairtactivity as well, which is all the physical responses associated with this, such as tingling in the body, or certainly around the area of the third eye, and around the periphery of the skull. So what I would say is that what we normally have is a response that is our dominant response. It might be visualization, but not audio and not knowingness. It might be knowingness, but not audio and visualization. It might be tingling in the hands, but not audio, visual, or knowingness. And so it's a case of which response do we get that we ignore because we want to have visualization or want to be able to communicate with entities. Okay. I think the thing is we need to sort of work on that first. When I do the traversing the frequencies work, I get people who again get frustrated because they're not seeing something, but they hear an awful lot and they ignore what they're hearing. And I get other people who hear an awful lot but want to see. So again, I've repeated the same thing there. We've got people who want to experience something associated with a different function they've got. So if they're seeing things and they want to hear, they ignore what they're seeing because they want to hear something, which is the right way around, actually, as I've just said. So basically, you've got the different, or for instance, if they want to know something, but all they get is hearing or seeing, or a combination of the two, they ignore this clairsentient side of it as well. So we might have a major function of clairaudience or clairsentience or clairvoyance or clairtactivity, whatever you want to call that, and we might desire another function rather than the one that we work on. What we have to do is work with the one we're good at. Work with it, use it, trust it, and progress with it and perfect that. That rises us through the frequencies, and then we get to a stage where, because we're higher frequency, our functionality changes, and then those other functions start to come into it. And so then we might have clairsentience as well as clairvoyance. And then we work on the clairsentience and the clairvoyance, we start to get clairaudience, or another combination of those. So it's really about working with what we've got, not worrying about what we would like to have, but knowing that provided we work, with enough diligence and dedication, that we will eventually get those other functions as a natural condition associated with being a higher frequency. So it will come. I've got plenty of examples in the Traversing the Frequencies workshops where people have, for want of a better word, they've done a whole day of Traversing the Frequency 1 and almost 3/4 of Traversing the Frequencies 2, and they said, "Oh, I'm not seeing anything. I can't detect anything." I said, "Well, what do you get?" I said, "Well, I hear things." I said, "Well, hearing things is good." I said, "Just work on that, trust it." And then right at the very end, that particular person was feeding back what was experienced, and what was described straight away was seeing something. And I said, "You do realise you're showing that you've seen something?" And that person was like amazed. They hadn't spotted it. They were so much focused on the desire for seeing something that when they even saw something, had a visualization, they missed it. Because the desire overrode the function. So really it's about calming down and just going with the flow and working with what is working for you as a function. Okay, next one, the last bit on it. There's a bit more about autism in the rest of the questions, but I've got some other questions in between, but this is the last of this particular series of questions. Right, it continues. Furthermore, something people with it ask often is how they participate in endeavours that involve communicating with beings, or work that involves relating to beings. When we work with other beings, whether they're incarnate or disincarnate, incarnate at a higher frequency, or disincarnate being not incarnate at all, we have to be very careful, because there are astral entities who are lower frequency astral entities around the 4th and 5th levels, so even the 6th, who take advantage of us by using our desire, our desperation to communicate with something, and slot into our energies as a result of that. So basically they look at our desperation and then fulfill our desires by talking to something. Well, we're talking to an astral entity, but sometimes they try and coerce us, and more often than not they do coerce us, and they take energy from us as well. So we have to be very, very careful what we do with this. So we have to be discerning about who and what we communicate with. Now, the thing is that you can broadcast your desire. And this is one thing we do with the Traversing the Frequencies workshops. We broadcast our desire to enter into communication with any entities. And I would suggest that if you do that, during a meditation, that you also broadcast that you only wish to communicate with those entities of high frequency. And you may say over, for instance, the 13th frequency level, as an example. And so therefore you'll start to get a more benign and benevolent function rather than adversarial function in terms of what you're communicating with and the information you're getting. So basically it's about sitting down, meditating, clearing the mind, focusing the eyes upon the location of the third eye, and really mentally stating that you wish to communicate with an entity, and that entity should be pure, high in frequency, and at least above the 13th level, preferably the 14th and above, and just see what happens. Now, the communication will come in several different ways, as we've just described. Either by the visualization, clairvoyance, hearing things, clairaudience, or knowing things, clairsentience. So it might not be that you'll pick up things like a communication, as in the terms of a chat with them, for instance, a dialogue with them in that way. It may be that you feel the presence, and something will come to you, some level of understanding. You can ask them questions about certain things. Can you describe something for me? Can you explain this? Can you explain that? And they will do so. But you might find it won't specifically be how you expect it. You might not be having a conversation with them in the way you think it. It can very, and with my work, it normally comes through in a variety of different ways, depending upon the information that's coming through. Some of it is clairaudience, quite a lot of it's clairaudience. And I do get a lot of clairvoyance as well when it's required, because explaining concepts should be explained in a number of different ways. And there's a lot of stuff I get through just knowing this, and then I have to sit there for a long time working out how I'm going to put this into words, because knowing is one thing, but writing it down in human terms is something else. So it's all about sitting down, meditating, expressing your desire to communicate with any other beings at high, but specify pure beings, high frequency beings, and around up to, well, above 13th and 14th frequency is best as well. And then just see what comes. Again, with all of this stuff, don't try to logic it out. When we receive something, write it down. Don't judge it. Don't question it. Don't try to work it out. Just write it down. And because when you start to judge it, work it out, or question it, then you lose the connectivity, because you're starting to doubt what's there. So a level of doubt is also a big issue in terms of not being able to work with other entities or beings who are going to, whether they're disincarnate or incarnate, or just general clairsentience about understanding things. It's about understanding and working with, knowing that what you're getting is right, and accepting it, being full acceptance, and then write it down, or if you've got a voice recorder, verbalise what you've experienced, and then after, and then just get the feeling of it as well. Because in general, we don't just get all, visualizations or spoken word in our spiritual ear. We also or knowingness. We also get feelings associated with them as well. So they use our emotions as another means of communication as well. So and again, an emotional response might be a person's major functionality, and so that should be used as well, and worked with and perfected, and to allow you to move the frequencies to allow you to get access to the other functions that come naturally. Okay, so I hope that's answered the question. I've rambled on a bit there, but I think it's it's going to be useful to people to understand that frustration blocks things. Just be in a state of beingness. Accept the fact that there's going to be times when you sit and meditate and nothing happens. Just enjoy the bliss of nothing happening around you, and that's the most important thing. Accepting the bliss and nothingness is one of the little tests that Source gives us to see if we're dedicated enough. We're always tested in various different ways to check out and make sure that we are dedicated and clean and pure. And this is one of those ways. Okay. Okay. Next question from WP, who said that he hopes I enjoyed my travels in Egypt, and hopes that they were interesting and helpful and useful. So the first question is reference to global warming. It says, is global warming, aka climate change, caused by man, or is it a result of natural weather cycles? The scientists of the 1970s were busy worrying about global cooling, recognising that most people are not interested in foul on the air or water. What is the true agenda of climate change, or the climate change movement? They call names and sneer at anybody who does not agree with them. They're not very loving, not very tolerant. What is the politicisation of this topic? Are they really interested in the welfare of the planet, or are they using this to advance a political, economic agenda? The United States has made a dramatic strides in the past 40 years in reducing emissions. For example, today's average combustion engine in automobiles emits less than a tenth of those in the 1970s, and yet the movement acts like nothing has been done. If they are sincere, what exactly do they want to see happening? What about the massive pollution in Beijing and Shanghai? And there's also Taiwan, of course. Why aren't the believers putting pressure on China? In the meantime, are there any of them turning their thermostats down to 65 degrees in the winter and up to 80 degrees in the summer? All right. Well, basically, climate change is a function of a couple of different things. What we do have clearly human beings have an effect on the environment, and we need to clean our act up, so to speak. It's very important for us to do that. The pollution that we give obviously destroys animals, environments, such as makes rivers poisonous, pools or lakes poisonous, and it destroys the environment and the atmosphere, so that trees and plants can't breathe properly and convert the CO2 into oxygen in an efficient way. So we have an effect without doubt, and we have an effect in all sorts of different ways. If you think about it, we don't just pollute the atmosphere with hydrocarbons or the exhausts of aeroplanes or motor cars or other things. We pollute it in terms of radiation. We pollute it in terms of radio waves. There's everything that we do, we create, can be classified as a form of pollution because the byproducts are whatever they are, and even our rubbish and our trash pollutes because we just dig a big hole and put it in a big hole. So we are affecting the environment in a dramatic way, but it's something we can work on. We need to work on better ways of recycling and converting our rubbish into reusable energy, and working on how we move around the planet and whether those, and our manufacturing techniques, because everything creates some form of pollution. But the big things like climate change, there is an effect on climate as a result of the pollution of mankind. And certainly the ozone layer is a good example of that, or a reasonable example of that. But on top of this, though, there is a bigger weather system associated with the Earth than we give it credit for. And basically, a lot of the things that we experience are a natural function of a large global weather system. And so, and that global weather system is affected by the magnetic poles in the Earth. So if we have a pole change, that affects the way that the molecules, the atoms in the air and in the water and everything else interact with each other. So a pole change or a start of a pole change starts to affect the weather, the climate, and things like jet streams change directions as well. But that's something else. The big weather system is misunderstood totally. I seem to remember a story about Scott when he went to the Antarctic, and I think I've said this before in a Satsang a few years ago. But basically, the guy who was working on the weather, the meteorologist, he looked at the weather system of the polar area that Scott was working on, Captain Scott, and said that, right, you're going to have wind assistance in these months going in one direction, and on the way back the wind changes and you'll have wind assistance coming back. When Scott went to that on his expedition, the weather system was completely wrong, and that ultimately contributed towards their demise. And the guy who was the meteorologist was absolutely bereft, because he couldn't understand why he'd had 9 years of calculations and 9 years of recordings that showed that, in effect, what he predicted should work. But on this 10th year, it didn't. And it was only a number of years later, like 20 odd years later, that he actually worked out what was going on. He was so bereft about getting it wrong and these people dying that he dedicated the rest of his life to understanding what was going on with the weather in the polar region that Scott worked with. And he worked out there was a bigger weather system where every 10 years or so the weather system changed for a year, reversed itself for a year, and then went back to what it was normally. So 9 years out of 10, the wind would be going in one direction and then come back over a period of months, and then swap around over another period of months. And then the 10th year, for instance, it would change completely and be completely different. And then the 11th year, it would go, and then 12th and 13th year, it would go back to being normal. And he worked this out, that there was a bigger weather system, and a bigger series of changes there. And this is what's happening with us. I mean, that weather system, which is a 10-year cycle, is, for all intents and purposes, just a small weather system that has weather systems within it. What we have is huge weather systems with weather systems within those. And so climate change, is the big levels of climate change we're experiencing, not just pollution, is a function of big natural weather cycles and weather cycles within weather cycles. And so we've gone from global cooling to global warming, and and then they might change to something else. It might be global tropical, for instance, those sort of things. But it's just a big natural weather system with cycles within cycles. In fact, thinking about it, I seem to remember a BBC Horizon program. A BBC Horizon are a science documentary presentation in the UK. And I seem to remember a long time ago seeing a program where they were taking ice cores, and on these ice cores they could see the evidence of how weather had worked and what had changed and everything else. And they said, you can see here, for thousands of years, the weather systems were the same. And then here, things start to change. And he said, weather systems changed here after a couple of thousand years, and then you've got things changing over 100 years, things changing over another 900 years, and then things changing within 20 years. And they were saying that things can change really quickly or take a long time to change. It depends upon where the cycle is. Now, clearly the ice core was only a snapshot of a certain part of the bigger weather system, the bigger natural weather cycle. So, in that respect, even with the ice core, they're only getting a small snapshot of what the bigger weather system is. But it told them that there is weather systems within weather systems and cycles within cycles, within bigger cycles. And so we can change from one weather system to another really, really quickly. And I think they were talking between 20 and 50 years. Is one particular time frame in which we can change from one, drastically from one system to another system. In fact, right now they were saying that we talk about global warming or global cooling, and that's a problem. But actually, they were saying that we are currently in a mini ice age. So if we go into a warmer Earth, it's a natural function of a bigger weather cycle. It's not climate change caused by man alone. Man has some contribution towards it, but in real terms, it's to do to a bigger weather system. And of course, the more cleaner we get in terms of everything, from the burning of hydrocarbons and oil, fossil fuels and creation of electromagnetic radiation and other radiation, we start to work on cleaner energies and cleaner manufacturing techniques, the less we will pollute the Earth and affect little changes within the environment as well. So basically, getting down to another part of the question, governments and people like to use these things for political justification of their own agendas. If it can be used to control people, it will be. If it can be used to justify the actions of a cause, it will be. And so really these people who are climbing on the global change bandwagon really aren't doing it to help the Earth, they're doing it to help themselves. And it's as simple as that. And of course, at some point China and Taiwan and India, they'll start to get their acts together and start to work in a more cleaner and pollution-free environment as well. Because they'll have to, because they won't be able to continue otherwise. It'll be something that they have to do, not because they want to do it, because they have to do it, because they won't be able, because they'll create so much pollution they can't survive. So survival comes first, therefore reduction in pollution will come as a result of that. Okay, next question here. It is undeniable that free market capitalism, although not perfect, has dramatically raised the standard of living for more people than any other economic system in the known history of the planet. Apparently so, yes. Okay. Why then do otherwise intelligent people advocate and fall victim to socialism, including Pope Bernie Sanders, etc., when there are countless examples of socialism's destruction of human dignity and well-being, including Cuba, Venezuela, Argentina, North Korea, the old Soviet Union, and Eastern Europe, to name a few. Simply put, socialism is a low-grade response to the need to be in communion with each other. If we are in communion with each other in a total and complete sense, then we would work in a way where everybody's working for the benefit of each other. And so nobody would be mega rich, nobody would be mega poor. Everybody would be equal in their education, in their ability, in their work life, in their home life, in their richness, their material wealth. Everybody would be the same. And this is a utopian level that we would like to achieve on Earth, but it's something that happens as a result of being disincarnate anyway, because we all work together in community. We're all part of Source. We're smaller units of Source entity, of God, if you want to call it that. So we start to think of it in terms of we are, better off working together collectively than we are separately. But because we don't do it properly, then it starts to fall apart, because within the need to be in communion, okay, communism and socialism being a branch of the same thing, we want to have this equality for all. But within these structures, there is still capitalism. There's still people who are, for want of a better word, selfish, and wants to have power over somebody else, or want to have more money than somebody else. So although, we'd like the ideal is to be in a communal sense, in a collective sense, or a socialized sense where we're all working for the benefit of each other, and nobody's richer or poorer than anybody else, and nobody's got more or less than anybody else. Within that, there is greed, and that greed is a little spark of capitalism within the socialism, within the communism. And that's why socialism and communism doesn't actually work, because there's capitalism built into it, basically. And that's human nature. That's low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions that creates the failure of socialism and communism. When we're higher frequency, the ideal of being in communion with each other will work, because we will see that we are better working for the collective than we are working for ourselves. Because if we work for the collective, then we benefit. Whereas in the moment, if communism or socialist states work for the collective, somewhere down the line there's some individual who's benefiting from it on the back of the collective. So it's a different thing. So basically, this is what happens. They fall victim. Intelligent individuals fall victim to socialism and communism because they're not working properly, because within it is a function of capitalism, and that's the reason for that. It's not pure. I'd like to think that when we go through the next frequential increase, that we start to see things properly, we start to work with each other properly, and then we'll naturally fall into a communal state, in a collective state, which will be a true communistic state where we're working for each other, not some bizarre governmental practice from Eastern Europe or Soviet Union or China or Cuba or Venezuela. It'll be correct communion, working together. Okay, so I hope that answered that question. I've got a couple more questions now. Again, going back to this autistic question, series of questions we had previously, and the subject matter of autistic people. And it's from US again. It says, I have a question about the composite third chakra that combines the functions of lower chakras 1, 2 and 3 in autistic people. Okay. Is the composite chakra thus able to process or interpret the emotions or feelings of other humans who are operating with all lower chakras? Right. Is it that part of the autistic's problem is relating or communicating with other human beings or beings at higher frequencies? Right. I'm going to go back to the first part of it. The composite third chakra is basically one where the functions of the first and second chakras are combined with the third, and this is a function of rising up the frequencies. When we're a higher frequency form, or we have a human form as a higher frequency, we don't need to be so anchored in the lower frequencies associated with the gross physical. And so the chakra that works with the energies, the chakras that work with the energies of the first, second and third frequency levels, the first base chakra, second sacral chakra, third solar chakra, start to become redundant. And so what happens then is we get a composite chakra, a third chakra, which also works on the frequencies of the first and second levels, the base chakra or root chakra and the sacral chakra. And so it's a broader bandwidth chakra that copes with all those three levels together, but focuses on having chakras in the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th levels. So the chakras that are dealing with the spiritual, physical and the energetic are the dominant number here, rather than being balanced of, for instance, where we have 3 in the gross physical and one supposedly in the mixing pot between the spiritual, physical, and the energetic, which is the astral, the heart chakra, and then the other three being the throat chakra, spiritual or third eye chakra, and the crown chakra, being the higher functions. Then you see that the overall pull is towards an energetic system which is working with higher frequencies. So actually, the composite third chakra allows the individual body, the incarnate vehicle, to operate on the higher frequencies, whilst still having an anchor point in the gross physical, but not as heavy an anchor point that was there. So because of that, people who are autistic or who have a composite third chakra rather than the first, second, and third chakras will be more detached from the vagaries of incarnate individuals who are more immersed in their incarnation, because they'll be experiencing a higher reality, a greater reality. And so they won't be so involved with the emotions, the human emotions. They won't be so involved with gossip or the need for material wealth or status. They'll be more detached from that. And so they won't be able to process properly or interpret the thoughts, behaviours and actions, the feelings or emotions of other individuals or humans who are operating on those lower levels. So that's the reason for that. It's basically they're a higher frequency, and because they're a higher frequency, this third chakra is a function of keeping them grounded slightly. Okay. So to answer the second part, is that part of the autistic problem relating or communicating with other human beings or beings at higher frequencies or beings at higher frequencies? No, it is definitely the autistic's problem with relating or communicating with other human beings. Yes, because they are functioning on a higher level. They may seem stupid to us or incompetent or incapable to us, but actually they're not. They're operating on a completely different level. They're operating on a level where they are in a detached, but more caring and loving environment within themselves. And when they communicate with each other, they are experiencing a drastically different level of communication that normal human beings do. In terms of beings with higher frequencies, again, it's this confusion with having to communicate and commune with so-called normal human beings, and the disharmony associated with that, which causes blockages with them communicating with beings at higher frequencies. If they disassociated themselves totally with the sort of standard or normal human being, they would be able to operate using their normal functionality in a completely capable and unquestioning way, undoubting way, and they would be able to communicate with other beings at higher frequencies, whether they're incarnate or disincarnate. Okay, so I hope that answered that question. Let's go now to that's all the questions now, which is very good. Let's go to the meditation, shall we? Which is to really get ourselves connecting with the soul in the soul seat. Okay, so let us sit in our straight backed chair. Okay, with our feet flat on the ground, back straight. The smaller the back in the right angle part of the chair. Hands palm uppermost on the upper thighs, back straight, eyes closed but focused on the area of the third eye at the front of the forehead, in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And I just want you to concentrate on being internalized. Just focus on being inside the body, and the skin that covers all over your body is the outer shell. So your consciousness resides only within the shell that is associated with the skin covering the body. So basically you are within the body. You can go into any of the organs, Okay, the skeleton, venous system, nervous system, muscular system, lymph system. But you can't go out of the body to the room that you're in, for instance. So your body is a vessel, an empty vessel, and you're within it. Your focus and your concentration is within the body, within this shell. The energy system that's within the body is very similar to the venous system, except it transmits energy. And we have receptors or chakras of major, minor and mini varieties to pull in energy or push energy, or act as junctures between different energetic distribution lines. To be able to commune with the soul in the soul seat, we need to focus on the soul and the soul seat. And so we need to move all that energy distribution, and therefore our consciousness, because our consciousness also resides in this energy. Our beingness is the soul within the soul seat, or the aspect, the projected aspect from the true energetic self, or the Hindus call the Godhead, we sometimes call the Oversoul, or the Higher Self. So let's visualize all of the energy in the head and the brain coming down the neck and sitting at the top of the shoulder girdle where the neck meets the shoulders. So you start to lose the feeling of the head. And then the energies associated with the tips of the fingers start to move up the fingers, the first knuckle, second knuckle, third knuckle, and into the hand. And the energy retracts, withdraws, goes up past the wrist, the elbow, forearm, upper arm, into the shoulder girdle itself. Then moves into the center to join the energies that are associated with the head. We then move all that energy, that ball of energy that's now being created, down the spine. Down the spine till we get to the same height on the body as the location of the two heart chakras, which are just around the location of the middle of the sternum and the associated point on the back of the body for the rear aspect of the heart chakra. And now I want you to move towards the center of the body and stay at the center of the body, so you're at the point where the connection between the rear aspect of the heart chakra and the front aspect of the heart chakra meet in the middle, in this energy line that comes down, this hara line that comes down from the true energetic self through an area close to the crown chakra, straight down the body, down towards the pelvis, and distributes down the legs towards the earth. But we'll sit in this point where the two heart chakras join each other in the center. So we'll meet the soul seat there. We haven't finished yet. We need to retract all of the energy from the legs. So again, visualize the energy moving out of the toes, the knuckles of the toes to the feet, up towards the ankles, moving up the calves to the knees, up the legs to the thighs, to the hips, and then coming into the pelvis and joining the bottom of the spine. Then the energy associated with the legs moves up the spine, again to the point where the two heart chakras meet, and joins the energy from the upper parts of the body there. And then the energy system that's in the body itself just moves out of all the organs, goes towards the heart line, and moves up towards, again, this area, the soul seat, which is in between the two heart chakras. And so our consciousness, our sentience, associated with this incarnation, can now focus on all this energy that was previously distant, this sentient energy, soul energy, this aspect energy that was distributed about the body, now being within the soul seat, where the pure sentience of the aspect or soul resides. Just allow your consciousness to be in this ball of sentient energy that is the soul, the aspect, that which animates the human form. For most of you, this will be the first time you've been able to place your consciousness, that consciousness which is created as a result of incarnation, we sometimes call the ego, into the energies associated with that sentient energy that's projected from the true energetic self into the human form, what we sometimes call the soul. Just bathe in the purity, bathe in the high frequency energy. Feel the communion and the love of your consciousness being in contact with that which is that little part of you which is truly you. Feel what it's like to be in and with your soul, in and with the pure sentience and the energy associated with that pure sentience that is really you. Let yourself sink into the communion of the ego, that which is created through incarnation, with that which is truly you in reality, or a small part of it, I should say. Feel the bliss, feel the calmness, feel the wonder, feel the delight. Notice how there's no urgency, there's no hidden agenda here, there's no material desires here. It's all pure. We'll stay here for a few minutes, just enjoying soul bathing, if you want to call it that. Bathing in the energy of your soul. You can soul bathe for as long as you want. You can be here for 10 minutes, or you can be here for 5 minutes, or you can be here for an hour. Just communing and being that which you are. Don't think, don't work out shopping lists or things you need to do. Just be in this wonderful, pure energy and pure thought, pure beingness. We'll just stay here for a few minutes longer. Again, just be. Think of it like sunbathing, where you just lie there on the beach, letting the sun rays be absorbed through your skin. Right now you're residing in the soul seat of the human form, and your consciousness, your sentience, that has been created as a result, well, the ego that's created as a result of this incarnation, is within the sentience of the energy that is the soul, that projected smaller aspect of the true energetic self. Notice how you are one with everything at this level, just in your soul. Everything is understood, nothing's a problem, everything is seen as an experience. Okay, so let's start to refocus on moving back into our body again, so we can start to go about our normal incarnate duties. So allow all the energy to redistribute around the body. So allow the energies to move back into the areas of the body of your human form. Moving out of the soul seat, down through the energy lines into the areas of the heart and the liver and the lungs and the skeleton and the venous system and the nervous system and the muscular system. And then part of that sentient energy starts to move down through the hara line, back down towards the pelvis, and start to populate the legs. Populates the hips, thighs, the femurs, the knees, calves, the ankles, the feet and the toes. So you start to feel not only your body again, you start to feel your legs again. And then the energy that's on the top of the body, the arms and the head, starts to move out of the soul seat and back up again. You can go up the spine if you want to, or up the hara line. When you get to your shoulders, the energy goes through to the shoulders, to the upper arms, the elbows, the forearms, back into the palms of the hands, the thumb, and each of the knuckles of the fingers until you can feel your fingertips again. And then finally the last piece of energy, sentient energy, goes up through the neck and distributes itself around in the brain area. And so you start to feel as if your body is what you are again, and that you're incarnate and not sitting in the energies, the sentient energies of the incarnate, or should say the incarnate aspect, or the projected aspect from the true energetic self, that which is the soul. When you're ready, you can come back into the room. Take a drink of water if you have some with you. And you can slowly start to move around. Your body might feel a little bit clunky or a bit stiff. Okay? But so just move slowly and get out of your chair slowly as well. Well, that's the end of this particular Satsang on the 23rd of December. Thank you very much for listening to it and to providing questions. It's always a joy to look at the questions and to work with the questions. Again, I tend to read them on the spot on the time. I don't pre-read them, so I get the information from source or from the rest of the greater reality on the spot. So it's unadulterated by me. It comes straight through as it is. And just a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. The next Satsang will be on the 27th of January. So if you can send questions by the 20th of January, that'd be fantastic. Okay. Gods and sources love to you all. And do have a great holiday. Don't forget to look after yourselves and look after those who are dependent upon you. And love everybody. And realise that they're just another soul struggling with their incarnation. Okay. Source and God's love to you all. Goodbye.